Hey, good evening. Let's go ahead and make some maps. Tonight's goal on my ever never-ending quest to build out the village of Orhasi is to finish redoing how I add layers of water to my map. So I'm going to go back. Here I was looking at my civilization layer. I'm going to go back into my water layer. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean all of this up in a similar way that I cleaned up the civilization layer so that I have distinct object types for rivers and... That fly's annoying. Somehow the crickets aren't quite as bad. Music's here too, though. Music is brought to you by Sirenscape. Sirenscape. It's amazing for music. Let's see here. So the way Houdini works is it's a procedural... It's a suite for procedurally generating bits of data. And it allows you to do that by creating these networks of components. So for here, for example, I drew a curve. And then from there, I fed that into a transform to adjust its height, fed into another one to resample it to update the points. And every step along the way, as it's going through the graph, it's just updating the calculations, which ultimately defines out the base geometry of the landscape, as well as allows me to paint various regions so that I can apply different effects to them later. And so the thing I want to do right now is I want to go and I want to create a distinct layer for a river. And to do that, we are going to start by taking a component I've already created that's somewhat similar. So I'm going to create an instance of a road. And I'm going to save a copy of it. So we're going to go and create a new copy of this layer. And we're going to save it into my custom node. Share all my objects in. And we are going to rename this from road to river. You may not be able to see this because of how Houdini and how OBS captures windows, but believe me when I say that is what I'm doing. And we're going to create that. And it's going to take it a minute to update that. Good. That then feeds me another pane that you can't see that's going to let me go through and edit the attributes. And all that's going to do is allow me to adjust what elements I see up top here in the panel when describing my river. So, we're going to start. Well, I don't need the cross water option, so we're going to delete that. Contour segments. Yeah, most of these settings will still apply for now. So we'll just go ahead and update that for the moment. And then what we're going to do is bring over the erosion layer, which is the last layer in the chain that I had. We're going to feed that into the inputs, and then we're going to take the geometry for this particular river, and we are going to feed that in as well. And then we're going to go and we are going to copy this chunk that defines that river, and we're going to paste it in here in its place. So now we don't have the curve coming in from there as we just did. It instead is coming in from the input. So now we can still see it coming in just the same. And from here I can go and I can start changing everything else around. So this is going to need to be fed by the terrain as it comes in, not by that input. As I go through here, I'm going to take a look at each of these options and see if there's anything that I truly care about and think is a setting that it really makes sense for me to, go and tweak via the panel on a basis. That was words. So, comes in, we project it up on high, we resample it so that we can have smaller segments to work with, and that's really just so I don't have to draw a ton of tiny little dots manually. So from there, what does this do? We start a block that we're going to iterate over, and we're going into this river tool that I created a while back, and well, that remains as a black box and probably will for the time being. So as you can see here, that as we go from the entry point onto this river tool, it's projecting the line onto the terrain object itself. And as it resamples it, it's removing the points and smoothing it out a bit to create a more procedurally drawn out river. It's also finding that the contours now are, you can see between the two, it adheres more to the landscape itself. So this can be hard to tell on occasion. Actually, if I go back here, I can do this, can't I? I can mark that as the terrain. So then when I go back in here, it should still, it's not going to show. Anyway, we have our got our base terrain. Got our initial river. Bump it down to the landscape as close as we can, and then we go and we resample it. Why am I setting that resample would be so large. What happens if I keep it small? Change a little bit. In very small, specific places, it changes a bit. But for the most part, it's not really noticeable, so we'll let it stay high to reduce some of the granularity. And then we're feeding that back into the river tool again with a different step multiplier. And right, just in a step multiplier like this. Doesn't do a whole That's remapping it back to there again. Oh yes, and then we're adding color on so that I can go and I can add normals onto the points. That visible so I know where exactly the curves are running. And then that is going to get fed into the cascade tool. And that is going to ensure that the river, oh yeah, you can see it here happening in small places, but the river is constantly going down, and when it's too steep a drop, it's going to just dip. Instead of to create a more natural river type effect. Now this one's supposed to be fairly gradual and lazy, so I'm not surprised there's very few of those cascades in here. And we're going to calculate the attributes, and then resample again. Once again, reducing down the fidelity. Yes, this is supposed to calculate the width. We get some noise to it. Then at the very end of all this, we get a mesh that defines what the river looks like. A lot of these points don't need to actually have special names. So I'm going to care about outputting this here because it's just going to go straight into the next piece of the pie. Seeing as how we don't care about, well, we're going to leave that marked for now because that is going to matter. So heading back, we've got this bit of logic now defined in there. So I don't need that anymore. And then let's take a look at what else we were doing here. So we've got two other sections. A water surface, where it's going through, taking a look at both the rivers and the projections and creating all the masks for it. And then we've got this other section where we're going through projecting to height field to update the geometry, and we'll go through and create all the different components of the layer, the masks. for the layer. And then we output that after we add a little. It's kind of silly. And we did the same for the pond. And we have the bit where we merge everything at the very end. So this is just adding the masks. This is actually updating the textures as well. So we're gonna copy this as the base for what we're going to do. Then we are going to go back into our river. And come on. Pro tip, if you're deleting a large section of a map, make sure you don't delete the geometry that drives it. Then you might have a lot of undoing to do. There we go. Try that again. Out. Here, we're gonna have so actually there wasn't a whole lot that we saved by cloning that node. Now is there? So we're not going to actually deal with anything with that. That's going to go through to all the geometry. You know what? We are going to keep an outputs for that there. So we're going to create null. River. Is that projection anywhere over here? Output. I think I do. Oh yeah, we do. We use it when we go to map the surfaces. Okay, so I guess we'll keep that in for now. So, get into our room. We're going to this output another projection. So that's going to go through, and that's going to create our river. And there's two outputs, the projection and the mesh. And we're going to use those to create our masks and do all of sorts of fun stuff. So, So, to change this input to be output of a mesh, and we are going to have this also fed by the base height field. See, absolutely nothing coming. So why? No, if I change fields, you can see here we have mask modes we can play with, and we can see that it is in fact seeing geometry, which is defined by here. So if we're looking at it here, well, we want either side because we want it to effectively cut through. And actually, let's actually add a node in here to help see. So we're going to add a copy node, height field, and we're going to do that just so that we can copy from there. See the object, and so we can see by default, it's not actually doing anything. But as soon as we project it onto the height field, we can see now that that river mesh that we created is now cutting through it nicely. And it spots and creates a little bit of a lip at the very edge, but that's okay, that's doable. We can manage that. So, what goes next? Geometry. Thing. Projecting to height field is going to modify that. And that's fine, we want that to happen here because the base layer, the height field, should be modified by the river. Now from there, we are going to create a series of masks that are going to define the different portions of the river. So the first thing we do we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our river mask as being fed by here. So we need to update this to be and this is saying everywhere that is the intersection between these two meshes, paint it red, make it a mask so that we can work with it. From there, we can then start making our edits to the mask. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to copy that mask as a full mask into the layers that we're going to be exporting. File down here, because really this is going to have to get reworked quite a bit. So we're going to use a copy, and this is going to let me specify this mask in and give it a name all in one shot, effectively combining two steps in one. And we're going to go in here, hit expression, edit string, or I guess I can do that with Control E. Hey, that I wish I'd realized sooner. And then we're going to set this to Python as the type, and we are going to say this is going to be river underscore plus ch dot slash name. And what this is going to say is it's going to look at the name property within the type panel for this component, and it's going to combine that name with the river underscore to create the name for the mask. So you can see here it shows river underscore, most likely because I did not name this river. So we'll go back out onto that pane, and we're going to name it Orhasi, because it's going to be the Orhasi River. And now when we go back in, we can see that it's now calling itself, well, you can't because it's underneath my it's now called the Orhasi River. I can drag that down. That in the pile of things to fix later. So, add river mask. Another copy over here just so that we can kind of preview things as we're doing them. And so now if I feed this into here, I can choose as a source my river Orhasi. Feed that into a mask. Feed see my mask. We put a clear in here. Just to make sure that I have nothing left so that I can verify that it is copying layers over as expected. And it is fantastic. So from here, that one step alone here. Yes, these are edits I was making. I'm not going to preserve those for now. So I'm fine letting them go away. So these three phases are now gone. This is just a mask clear to do what that is effectively doing there. So we'll get rid of that. And that effectively adds the initial base mask for us. Next, we start creating the components, and we had 3 regions along the rivers: the bottom, the edge, and the cliffs. And this is done so that quickly and easily you can well, this is done just so you can be nice and happy. No, this is done so that you can be kind of intelligent about how you render these objects. So the bottom is just going to be the base of the river. It's the underwater portion of the river. The edge is really kind of that transitional zone between the dry land and you're officially underwater. There may be a bit muddier, the level may change up and down a bit. This is to represent that sort of tidal zone. And the cliffs are meant to be the sheer drop-offs for the river. Oftentimes in nature, when you see these drop-offs, there's typically different types of rock for the wall instead of like the normal dirt-based. You may see other areas, and this lets you add that in easily enough. So we're gonna go here, and we're gonna start recreating all these masks up here. Looking at how I did these. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to mask the river bottom. And you can see the way that we're doing this is we're just taking it's just a blur effect. We're simply shrinking down the mask up by a couple notches. It starts off initially fairly wide and spilling over the lip. We increase the radius to about 5, which is about 2 reductions down. And that gives us a pretty good amount of area for this to go underwater. Go one more notch, maybe. The only thing there is then you start really increasing that area, and that's not necessarily something you want to do. And so that actually should be a editable spot, shouldn't it? So let's go and so we've got to go back out, type properties, going to add in a new type. That will let me set this area. So I've got a width field already. I don't believe I will actually be using that one. Yes, I will be using that. So instead, I'm going to go and add another field that is going to be, we're going to call bottom. And this is going to be a slider. In the range 0 to 100 as it currently is here. And yep, we'll add that in. Now I can those buttons to open the little pane, and since this doesn't need to do anything fancy, I can just do a straight HScript expression to say it's going to be // bottom. Okay. Yep. So see how it's kind of highlighted green there now? So we know that that's from the HScript. And it means now I can go back, click on the main node, and now that I've got my bottom slider here, I can drag that to be my adjusted value. I, of course, cannot see that at the moment. There we go, now I can see it. I'll go to my window and I'll tell it to copy defaults from node to save that. Zero viewers now. Very nice. Very demure. Oh. Now we've got the river bottom masked. We new copy bit. No. Copy layer. This height field is going to feed in here. The mask is going to feed in here. And we're going to copy river bottom. Here. And just as we did with the last one, we're going to have this be a Python script, and we're going to have this be river. Let's be a little fancy. CH, the name, bottom. Yes, and there's one step I was forgetting here that I should do for each of these as they go on. So, we're also going to need to create a combine layer at the end of each of these steps. And what this will do is we'll feed in the previous mask. So feed that in. These are going to take two layers. One is going to be a base name. One is going to be the specific instance of it we're working on. So this is going to we're going to add together the layer we just created, and we're going to add together the base rivers layer overall to effectively just combine those into one mask, and then we are going to update that layer. This way we can have a default that combines all of the types and has the individuals as well. Very nice. So, I'm just going to call that update rivers. This in turn is what will then feed to the river copy bottom. And if we now go over to our copy layer over here, see we have for Rossi, we also have rivers. Now we're going to do the same thing here with these two. This is going to be, it should be update rivers, and this will be copy. And here we're going to have more or less the same thing, but it's going to be the bottoms. Gotta do this twice more, once for the river edge and once for the river cliffs. And these are actually done in a slightly different way. So, rather than just having a nice, simple, easy blurring effect that updates the mask, our river edge is actually going to be a combination of the two unique masks we just did. So, we're going to take a combined mask that we're going to feed into from everything we've just seen. And this mask, we're going to give it two bits. First we're going to add in our river mask, and then we're going to subtract our river bottom mask. And that in turn, I have to set that as the script. Is that not working? I should switch this over. Why is this not coming through? Aussie river bottom. Aussie river bottoms. Spelling's important, folks. Especially when it comes to computers. You just can't help themselves. So, from here, we're gonna update river bottom, copy river bottoms. Gonna we're gonna feed that mask clear into here so we know have a clean starting point again. And this is going to be mask edit this one again so we could follow that correctly, accept, and now we've got a lovely mask here. It's just the very edge of the river. Now you see that the very edges of the maps kind of ties itself back together. Honestly, for as large a map as this is going to generate, having that tiny little bit to manipulate manually later is still going to be it's still going to be doable. That's still a huge time save just to get this much done. And I can always, of course, edit things before I get through there. So, I'm not going to do the painting because that was just me making some edits earlier. And now I just need to do this 4-step process that I should possibly make another macro for later. Always so weird how that doesn't always work out nice. So, edge. Change bottom to edge here. Okay, river edges. Copy river edges. Feed that into our copy just so we can do a quick spot check on that. So here are rivers. Show the full river. I can now go see edge, edges. I can go see bottom. Everything, and it's all just working fantastic. Those now. Those. Now the last component of this is the cliffs, and that is just a little bit different. Again. So, same basic pattern. Going to... These 4 steps are going to be exactly the same again. So let's go ahead and just... update this now. So the cliffs are going to... It's always plural, just because that makes sense to me in my head. So cliffs... River cliffs... Copy... Cliffs. Maybe keep that singular, just for the sake of consistency. This is going to be That's all there. So, those are gone. And that means this is the last bit we actually have to worry about for this section. So, we'll plug into both of those. That has everywhere else. And this is going to be a mask by feature node. Mask by feature lets you define attributes of the actual mask, actual terrain to do things with. In this case, this. So, our initial bit is we're going to mask by slope. And that is just simply going to be a minimum and maximum angle to define what counts as the cliff. And because of this, we're going to add another 2 trolls to our tool. One is going to be cliff min slope. I'll probably adjust these later. Float range from 0 to 90, because that's all that makes sense for a cliff. Float again is going to be a range of 0 to 90. Then I can oh wow. Oh yeah, so minimum slope is 0. That's kind of freaky looking. And then we're gonna that'll go away in a second once I finish up this bit. So yeah, now that there's 2 values in there, it's going to go away. And then out here, we're going to set those back to the values I wanted them at, which is going to be 20 and 90. 20 and 80. Again, I'm going to set those as my default. There. Right back in. Now, one thing you may have noticed, a lot of what's mapped out here falls outside of what is actually encapsulated within my river. So we're going to take this river cliff mask we just made, and we're going to create A and B. This is a node I've created that lets you quickly calculate bits between masks. So we're going to have we're going to feed this into here, and we're going to say mask is in, we only want it to be within my river. So take the initial river mask we created, we're going to feed that in as our B mask. Now, if we look at this, you'll see that only the cliffs within that initial mask are actually highlighted. So from there, when we go to do that. It's still having both in it. I fixed a bug similar to this the other day. So this is likely a problem in the A in B. So we're going to allow editing of contents, and we're going to go in there. And yeah, that is what I thought it would be. So I believe it was the A, not B, I already fixed for this for. If we contents. Yep, you can see in here we had to redo it a bit to basically be a whole crazy thing. So we're going to copy that whole crazy thing. Paste it in here. Bleed out the old implementation. Back, because I don't actually need it. Reorganize it quickly, and masks. And really what we want to do here is when we do this combined, we are adding in A, and then we're subtracting B. Initially, we're going to instead say to multiply the two. And by doing that, we're going to, everywhere where it's a 0 times 1 or a 0 times 0, it's going to stay 0. But everywhere there's a 1 and a 1, or multiple things positive, we're going to get something back. So that'll fix that. So there, I will save the node type and have it. That always takes a minute. Definition. Now that should come out like that. And when I go into here, I'm still getting something I don't expect to be getting. And why is that? Well, let's see. This is just a copy layer and then our place layer. So that shouldn't. If I delete that out. Yeah, that's still coming through. It's weird. Because it's coming through from here. So while I'm doing that, I also need to clear the mask here. Or more appropriately, short circuit that. That's shown there. This shows nothing here, which means I can go and fix this back up where base. Add another cliff. And then add another layer for cliffs. Here. You should see River Rusty Cliff. Rusty Cliffs. Good. And that is the very basics of the river. The next step is I need to go through and I need to use these masks to then create a new set of height fields, or to update another height field. And so realistically, I think I have to create those twice, which I've always found to be kind of ugly. But it is the way it is. And you can even see now that good news. The good news is that getting this to work for the pawns is going to be dramatically easier than the rivers. So, back in here. And now we're effectively going to have this feed into the one of the outputs. Now we're going to do all this over again, but this time it's going to be fed from a different height field. I'm 30-ish. Yeah, let's try to bank this out quick. So, do let's copy that block over to start. Fine, because the majority of this is stuff I'm going to want to have named exactly the same way anyway. It's going to be the same exact set of outputs, Only this is going to go to different output. Yeah, I did that correctly. So effectively what this is doing is it's going to use the secondary height field that we have as the input along with the exact same geometry. You recreate the same masks, but it's going to instead update the height field. But it's going to, yeah, so it's going to copy them onto the secondary height field that comes in, and then we are going to follow that up with some edits to that height field to set the water level for those features. So height field coming in, go here, see that it's still the same base height field. I do want to do this projection again, don't I? I do. I do. It's gonna go again. To make it all neat like. Feed that. So we're going to actually recreate it. Project. So all the attributes again. Do I even need to do that? I know I do. I do need to set the lower terrain. Because otherwise it could look weird when I do the depressions. So the way we were doing this earlier is I'd take the projection and transform. I did not write good notes for this at all. So project height field numbers. I don't know if I want noise for that. You can decide that later. Usually a little noise is nice, but sometimes it's just too much. Alright, well, I think I'm going to end up cutting it there then, because this is going to be a bit more work than I thought it was going to be. Those of you that watched, no matter how shortly, thank you for doing so. If you haven't already and you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe. Yada yada yada, and I'll see you next time. Bye.